Hello and welcome to Your County. I'm your host, Lynne Turner Fitzgerald. Zach Garhart is with us today. Zach is the fairly new executive director at the Yellowstone County Museum, the one up by the airport. Thanks for being here, Zach.
Well, thanks for filming this, Lynn. We love sharing what we're doing with the community.
All right, well, so let's back up a little bit. How long have you been executive director?
So just 4 months now, in January of 2024, but I have been with the museum for going on 6 years now.
Oh, okay. What drew you to the Yellowstone County Museum?
Well, if I tell the full story, my wife's an engineer. I'm trained as an archaeologist. My region is about Texas to Montana. So
Wow.
I told her, okay, you make the money, you get the job, I'll find something to do. Walked into the museum as a volunteer, and I never left.
So history, though, is kind of a hobby for you, or?
Oh yeah, I've always found the human story and what does it mean to be human fascinating. Since I was a little kid, I was reading philosophy, anthropology, and got into archaeology, and I've been slowly working my way back from thousands of years ago to today. And
That's a big...
more and more interested.
Wow. So where we are today, we are not at the museum. We are at a fairly new facility, but a very important one for the museum. Can you explain it?
Yeah, in 2019, our foundation board in the county built us an off-site storage facility. So with that, we can store our 20,000 artifacts. Ton of artifacts. Mm-hmm. It's climate controlled, it has environmental controls, it has pest control. It's really top quality, and it's to museum standards. And that's a true treasure, I think, in Yellowstone County, to have a facility that some of the large museums are jealous of for storage.
Really?
Yes. We had a couple state museum directors from different states come in and tour the facility, and they go, this is nicer than our storage. So I think we're on pace with that.
Awesome. What did you do before this?
So originally, the museum itself was the storage. So it was almost like a cabinet of curiosity. It's just full of artifacts. Mm-hmm. But as time went on, we wanted to tell stories with those artifacts, so we needed space. In 2006, they got a storage unit. They rented from the DNRC.
Okay.
And then we moved over here in 2019.
Okay. Well, tell me about building an exhibit. Where do you start? How do you tell the story?
Oh yeah, and that's one of the most fun parts about the job. Christian Cottage, our curator of collections, tends to do the majority of our exhibits. But what interests you? What do we have? And that was one of the fun projects of doing this, is we know everything we have. Every single thing we have, we now know it. So example, maybe we want to do an exhibit on dentistry because we have a ton of tools from the 40s and 50s.
Really?
So you just get inspiration just from being here, or maybe what the community wants. We do community surveys. What does the community want to know about their history? And we can figure out an exhibit for it.
So everything in this warehouse is Yellowstone County? Did it come from Yellowstone County? Primarily?
Yeah, so most everything is from Yellowstone County itself.
Wow.
There is quite a bit of stuff when people would migrate over in the late 1800s from their homelands. So Switzerland, Germany, Ireland, there's a lot of first generation items brought over too.
Nice. Tell me about this guy. I've seen him before.
Oh yeah, the goat's made its round, donated in 2006. It was in the chamber for a long time, so you probably saw it in the Buildings Chamber of Commerce. And it was recently too at the Western Heritage Center. And soon it's going to be in display probably in the McCormick cabin. So it makes its rounds. And that's something too to remember here. We have 20,000 objects here, and we try to rotate to always show the objects. Because we only have so much space, so new displays. So the things here aren't just getting dusty. They're prepping themselves for research, history, or a new display. Mm-hmm.
So at the museum, do you have docents who walk you through a tour?
And this is one of the things I think the Yellowstone County Museum does the best. We have 3 staff. One of the staff is watching the front desk. So the information you're going to get from our front desk, which is you can do tours, free admission.
Right.
And they're going to know everything about the facility. Everything.
Sure.
So I think that's a unique.
Yeah. Yeah, you have an expert right at your fingertips.
Yeah, you're either going to run into the curator, the director, or the educator.
Okay.
Always.
Well, I'm curious about the beginning of the Yellowstone County Museum. Sure. How long has it been here?
It was founded in 1953.
That's not that old then, really.
No, it's really not. And it was founded because they at the time they saw a need for the history to keep that stuff from the 1890s that their grandfathers, grandmothers brought over.
Sure.
And they wanted a place to store the history. And at that time, too, the Yagan family, instrumental in getting county funding. He managed to get a state law passed to ensure that counties could have mill levies, which keeps us going. And that's why Montana, if you go around to Montana, has a ton of county museums, because they can actually fund it.
Okay, okay. And was the building erected for the purpose of being that museum, or did it exist already?
Sure, so our entrance is the Paul McCormick Cabin. And that was built 1893 in the area where like First Interstate Tower is downtown.
Right.
And he had actually a home similar to Moss Mansion in his front yard and the cabin in his backyard.
Okay.
He's a whole other story in and of himself. But they brought the cabin up in 1953. There's a video on our website how that was done. Interviewed the architect that did it. Real nice video. But yeah, that was our entrance. And then they built on a basement. So we look small, but we actually have about 5,000 square foot of display space.
Wow.
And it was built on, I think the 60s was the last big renovation. And with any luck, we'll be doing one again before a couple years.
Well, so yeah, explain the footprint. How would you expand? Because it seems like it's all pretty compact up there.
It's a very tight site. We are a county-owned building on city land, 3 foot from a state highway. So we have series.
You're on your own.
Yeah. But everyone takes history. They understand the importance of history, and it's so obvious. Anytime we try to do anything with those agencies, they're so open and helpful in getting things done. But we have space. You know, parking's always going to be the problem.
Sure.
In terms of actual space, we could add about 30,000 square foot onto the current site.
Where?
Yeah, so if you go, what's my directions? East.
Okay.
There's the Hart statue that was
Yes,
done, and
yes.
That land over there, it's a heavy slope as you're driving out of the airport.
What would you move the statue then to?
The statue wouldn't have to move because it's actually quite a ways from the museum itself down the sidewalk.
And there's a train engine.
Yes, and that's basically where the back of the building would end, right along the train.
Okay. How did that come to be?
Sure. So the train was the last steam engine used in the Billings rail yard.
Oh.
And it got decommissioned in about 1954. And they thought, last steam, that's another great important piece of history.
Right.
Brought it up there to be the permanent. And then the structure over it was built in the 90s to make sure it stays.
Well, now define they, because they decide that the train is going to go. They decide who's they.
The first board of directors would have been, and then Charlie Yagan, or not Charlie, Peter Yagan, and a couple of the earlier founders. And they were, critical. Ben Harlow, several people in the history area.
Right.
And they transferred as time went on. In fact, it's another nice thing to talk about. We are owned by Yellowstone County, so we have a board, the Yellowstone County Board, that answers to the commissioners. We also have a foundation board that works with the Yellowstone County Board.
Okay.
So we have a board of about 15 folks making our decisions and overseen by county commissioners.
Okay. So this giant warehouse, I guess that's what you call it?
Warehouse, off-site building. Whatever.
Off-site building, okay, with 20,000 pieces in here, artifacts, memorabilia, am I saying it right?
Okay.
How do you determine what is valuable enough to keep? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people look at some of their stuff and they think, oh man, we should save this. Maybe or maybe not.
Yeah, and that we do have a collections committee made of staff and board members. And we have, what we want to ensure is that we have all the pieces of Billings history, but not 15 of each piece. So if you have an artifact you're interested in donating, come up to the museum or take a picture of it, send it to us, and we'll let you know kind of where we're at with thoughts. A good example of things like pianos. Everyone has a piano. We also have enough pianos, and you feel bad, but there's only so much we can take in.
I know. I do some work with Billings Studio Theater, and they have an off-site location, and I think I counted 8 upright pianos in their building, and then there's a couple more in the theater too. It's the same thing. They're hard to get rid of.
Yeah, and we always want to say yes, but we of course have limited storage space. For an example of just the cost of storage, a banker's box, little 8x11 box, that costs about $1,000 initially in supplies, materials for the first 10 years to store. So it's expensive to store
Explain
things.
that. I don't understand that.
Sure. So museum facilities have high standards. Everything has to be archival.
Okay.
And that immediately means expensive. But it lasts a lot longer than your other storage methods you might do at home. And then, of course, we're paying for the temperature, or the heat, the utility bills, because this temperature doesn't change. It's climate controlled, humidity controlled, and that's just decently expensive to maintain.
And it's kind of an obscure building. You wouldn't think about it if you drove past it, and there's a reason for that.
Oh, well, yeah, you always want to be a safe, secure facility. We have security here, and it's always maintained and watched.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Is there someone here 7 days a week?
Yes, there is.
Really?
So, yeah, it's a pretty secure facility.
Well, for your limited staff, who's tending the store right now?
Oh, so that's why I say it goes to one of the three of us are always somewhere.
Yeah.
Whether we're out in the public, giving a tour, storing items, we're everywhere.
Right. How often do you change the exhibit at the museum?
Sure. So in the past 2 years, we really focused on this offsite. And I should say, the reason this offsite got done is because we had 10 dedicated volunteers.
Oh.
We have over 100,000 hours of labor in
Wow.
this facility to get what we did done. When I first told the board, this is going to take us 10 years between Christian and I. And we'll be here for 10 years if you want us to do it right, because it takes time. But with those, we had those 10 volunteers come in, and they were amazing. And now everything is stored to the highest quality. And now, back to the exhibits question, we're going to go back to focus on exhibits. Christian's working on 2 different exhibits now. One's going to be kind of a homesteader exhibit in the Paul McCormick cabin. And then another one is up for grabs right now. So we'll see what that turns into.
Well, how much input do you really want or take from the public?
Oh, very serious. We in fact, we'll be doing a community survey, I think around June, to see a statistically valid one. And one of the questions will be, what do you want to see? And we take that very seriously and make sure we can at least incorporate it in everything.
Do you give them options? Like, do you want to see A, B, or C?
Yeah, we just for really to start the conversation, right?
Yeah.
And you never know what it's going to end up at. And there's been some exciting ideas, like a lovely display of the Cooper family ranch. Very popular because local families love to see the history shared. And they love to share it with the other people. Like, oh yeah, I know them, I knew them. It makes it really popular.
Well, you have some incredible artifacts in this storage facility. One that you showed me was used or owned by Calamity Jane.
Oh yeah, she had a faro board. And
Which is gambling.
Yes,
Okay.
It's an early gambling game. It's an actual board with cards on it, and you'd place chips on the cards and make kind of an early betting game.
Okay.
And she was known to have played on that board in a bank in Billings.
Okay.
Yeah, a ton of interesting items. Like the wicker casket we have.
Yeah.
1896 to 1904 used. It was a Victorian era.
Used?
Yes. Yeah.
It doesn't get buried?
No, so what they would use, it was a Victorian kind of cultural era thing brought over.
Tell me the year again.
1896.
Okay.
And that's when they opened Smith's Funeral Homes too.
Sure, okay.
And what they would do is they would lay the body out in the parlor in the casket. And then after a while, they would use the casket just for the transportation to the final resting place. So yeah, used over and over again.
I see, okay. So the body was never interred in that.
No, and it was really kind of a display thing, and that was just a cultural norm for some people at the time.
Right. You have one of the first electric clocks.
Yeah, ever sold in Billings, and that was from the Chapel Drugstore. And that opened in 1893 on Montana in Broadwater. So a lot of that early history.
And then you had an interest calculation.
Oh, that's fun. It's a MILIC tax rate calculator. And what it did, it was used in 1919 Yellowstone Bank. Every time the tax rate would change, you'd have to get a brand new calculator because it could only solve the one problem. But the tax rate didn't change that much. But it got to the point where I think every 2 years or so it was changing, just mass chaos. Like, oh, we need a brand new calculator, tax rate change.
Right, right. Do you have a lot of farm and ranch implements? I see you got tons of saddles. Where do these come from?
Yeah, sure. Most of those saddles are from the Connolly Saddlery, still open on 24th and a little past Monad. downtown. We also have some from Ten Eyck, another famous saddle maker in the area. A couple of side saddles up in there. Yeah.
Some tiny ones too.
Oh yeah. We have quite the variety of saddles, and that was another great thing. Our offsite storage board member made that Barry Behringer. It can hold 40 saddles, and it's on wheels, and it feels like it weighs nothing.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you've got some good volunteers. If people want to volunteer, how do they get connected?
Sure. Yeah, they can always contact us at the museum.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, and hopefully, this project of storing is almost done.
Yeah.
So most of the volunteer work wouldn't be collections oriented, though.
Right.
But
Well, so when you take in an item, how do you record it? How do you value it or determine the year, the story behind it?
yeah, the summary is we have a deed of gift form you fill out to prove ownership. We have, and when we give you that form, you fill it out. You give us your description. You give us the name, what the object is, and then we enter that in our database. So everything and the more you can give us, the better, because it's all in our database. And I should say our database, part of it is online right now on our website. You can go view the collection. There's about 1,000 items on.
Wow.
And hopefully eventually the whole collection will be on the website.
Right.
For free.
So is there a description next to the items? There's a visual and then a description?
Yes, there's a picture of everything
Okay.
and then a description. And that's one of the important parts of our reorganization. We can find anything very easily now.
Wow.
Because we know its exact location. It doesn't move unless it's in an exhibit, which we also note. So
Yeah.
that's another great part of our cataloging.
Well, and I see your shelves are numbered,
Yes.
so you know exactly where each item is, right?
Yes. Yes, we find it very easily.
And you've been working in this facility for over a year, is that right?
It's been about 2 now.
Wow.
And considering the original estimate was to take 10,
Oh,
yeah, this was very fast. I would say going back to that banker's box example, a banker's box on average probably takes about 4 hours because you have to label each artifact, and there's methods to that, and that takes time. And then you have to record all the information right, and recording it right's hard, and then you need to double check it to make sure you said what you think you said.
well, it's history.
Yeah.
Now, have you got room for more donations?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we would love to expand. We're working on a collections policy in terms of the items we have gaps in our collection. And I know some of the gaps we have in our photo collection, early photos of buildings, or even photos up into the 70s, 80s of buildings that either aren't there, are different, emblematic of Billings. We love taking in things owned by Billings businesses.
Oh, sure.
You know, made in Montana type things. We're always trying to expand in that way.
Now, do you ever sort of weed out your collection and try to eliminate certain items?
Yeah, you know, and we try to limit that. Deaccession is the formal
Sure,
word they
okay.
use.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, of course. And it's quite the process to do that. So say an example we might be doing. We have about 40 sewing machines.
Okay.
Do we really need 40 sewing machines? Well, maybe. Maybe they're all the same.
Maybe.
Maybe they're all different.
Do you have a treadle machine?
Yes.
Okay.
You want one? No.
No.
We don't do that, of course.
My grandmother had one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so if we want to look at the sewing machines for deaccession, we would make sure they aren't unique each. And if we found a couple of duplicates, the first thing we would do, if we decided, we don't need this one, we would contact other museums in the area. Say, hey, is this of
Oh,
interest to
sure.
anyone?
Okay.
Like I know there used to be a sewing museum in Montana, but
Just sewing?
yeah, they were dedicated to sewing machines. Not positive
Wow.
it was, but I think it was somewhere northeast. And maybe they're interested in
Yeah.
it. So that's the first thing we would do. And then next, we contact the donor as well.
Okay.
They kind of do that interchangeably. Say, hey, do you guys want this back?
Okay, yeah.
You know, hey, we're sorry. We have 4 or 5 of these. It's in the worst condition. And then if the answer is no to either of those, it's almost exclusively an item undesirable, and we don't sell collections.
Okay.
So, and that's the hard decision. And the odds are, it wouldn't make it to that point if it's a valuable artifact. Like the sewing machine, someone's gonna want that. We find the right home for it. But an example of maybe we have 1,500 doilies, and none of them are unique. We would dispose of them. Just because I think as a museum, you don't want the reputation of we're going to give you stuff and sell it. We just don't do that.
Sure.
So if it's important, we keep it, and if it's important but not for us, we find it a different home.
Okay. All right. What do you see in 10 years for the museum?
Well, I think really big education program's going to expand. It's going to
Okay.
blow up. We're really going to try to get education outreach out there. Every exhibit has a public talk right now, but we want to make sure the community knows that. 10 years, we'd also love to have that 20, 30,000 square foot expansion or be in a different location. That's quite a big goal. But I think, we have 30,000 artifacts here. We have a community of nearly 200,000 people, and we have 4,000 to 5,000 square foot.
Because there was talk some time ago about a brand new building for the Yellowstone County Museum, and that's on hold for now?
Yeah, it's that getting people behind the goal
Right.
and I think we can do it because we have the history here and the amount of attraction it would draw to Billings for tourism.
So much history. Well, geez, I want to thank you for sharing all of this. And any closing thoughts that you want to share?
Well, I think just share that we're open 10:30 to 5:30, Tuesday to Saturday, always free admission.
Free. It's always free.
Free admission. We give you free tours, especially if you give a heads up, bring groups, share what we do with the community. We love doing what we do.
How big a group can you accommodate?
So for a tour, I would keep it less than 30.
Okay.
But you could bring 80 people up and just kind of do it at your own pace.
Okay. All right. Again, Zach, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
The Executive Director of the Yellowstone County Museum. And thank you for joining us on Your County. We'll see you next time.